Okay, so let's start with the drums. First of all, I always start with the kick drum. I think the kick drum is one of the most important elements in the track. And so I've got a kick drum here made up of 2 layers. The first layer is this AKV 3 Kick Organic 7, which is from the new Artist Kicks Volume 3, which should be dropping tomorrow. And so this is what the first kick layer sounds like. So it's a nice kind of soft and punchy kick drum. And then the second layer is this organic 8 kick. And I just took this for the high end. So you can see here I've used the filter and taken out everything up to this point. And then together, that's what the kick sounds like. All right, and then we move on to the shakers. So I always find with like these afro house tracks, and especially Muz's tracks, is there's a really strong emphasis on like that 16th note shaker pattern. So building up like lots of different elements with that 16th note pattern is how you should kind of approach your hi-hats. So this is the first layer, which is from that Duluth drum loops pack. I'll link all of these below. This is a really nice wide one, kind of like moving left to right. Then we add in this Decades hat. That's from Melodic House and Techno Essentials. And then we add in another shaker loop here. And one more here. And now we start going down to the hi-hats. So that's kind of like covers all the 16th note patterns, but now I want to start putting a little more emphasis on that offbeat hi-hat pattern, the 8th note. So here we've got this hi-hat. And you'll hear there's some cool details in this hi-hat pattern, like you can hear these like little delays and stuff. Just makes it so that each hit is slightly unique and makes it feel a bit more human. And then I've got this layer here, and it's high passed a lot. It's just a bit of a longer hi-hat. It sounds like this. But I just took out all the mids, and we've only got the highs now. And then I think I've got one more, which is kind of just playing on all the 8th notes, which is kind of like how a drummer would play the hi-hats that don't tend to do just the offbeat notes. They'll also play on the downbeat. So I really like adding these kinds of loops to that because I find it almost like glues the top end together. So you'll hear that when I add this like in combination with the kick drum, and those, and then all the shakers. We have a nice solid high end going. All right, then I started adding some percussive elements. So here you'll see we've got a few things. We've got a bongo conga loop. That's also from the Duluth pack. I think I probably pitched that. Yeah, I pitched it up 2 semitones to put it into our key, which I think is G sharp minor. Yeah, E, F. No. So we're in G minor, I think. And then I've got this tom, which is kind of doing this offbeat pattern. That tom comes from the Melodic House and Techno Essentials pack. And then some more percussion, just like some bongos and congas. And then a ride. So all of the drums together sounds like this. Oops. So it's a pretty busy drum loop. The last drum element that I added was this kind of hand clap. And that's something that I made in Shimmer Shake Strike. You'll see here, kind of just drew out this pattern. Wait, this one here. And then on the mixer, I think I just turned down the reverb somewhere. I think it was here. And then that added into all of these. We get quite a nice drum groove going. Okay, let's go onto the instruments here. So the first thing you might have noticed was that bells element. Where is that gone? Bells, here we go. So the bells actually comes from Omnisphere, and I wrote out this MIDI pattern. It looks pretty complicated, but that's just because there's 2 octaves of it. The initial pattern is just this one. Okay, so the pattern's pretty simple here. Let me just change the scale. Over here, track is actually in B minor. I know I said G minor earlier, but it's in B minor. And so I've got this note here that's kind of sitting on the 5th. If I just play it on its own. And that's kind of just anchoring the melody and giving it some sort of harmonic tonal center. Then we're alternating between the 5th and the 1st, yeah. And then sometimes going down here to the 7th. And then the actual melody is really coming from this top line here of notes. And so here we're going up to the 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, and then back down. So it's really simple. We're just kind of like walking up and then back down. And then hanging around at the bottom here. So we're staying on the 3rd, then down to the 2nd, and then back up to the 3rd. So the melody is like this. And then we've also got that high note there, which is just an octave jump. And then I added, though, on the 2nd repetition, this little run over here that you'll hear. And that just like really spices it up, and I thought it sounded really pretty. I didn't really think about music theory when I was writing this. It's kind of just going by feel. And then when we get to the second half of the track, all I did was just duplicate this entire row of notes that you see over there, just down an octave. And that builds out this really nice harmony. And then we've got the little runs here. So yeah, I really love these bells. And if you want to know the actual sound that was used here, it's Omnisphere. And I think it is a preset, this Dream Bira ARP, but I think I went into the effects here, and brought down the echo, and also adjusted, I think it was the reverb on this page, and maybe played with like the volumes. I think there's a second oscillator here. Which actually on second listen sounds pretty cool, so I might bring that back in when I finish this track. Okay, so those are the bells. The other main element here would be, well, I guess there's 2 other main elements. The first one being the piano. And so I started out with writing these chords. So it's a pretty standard chord progression. If we're looking at the bass notes, we're going from the 1 down to the 6. Let's just turn on the scale guide so we can see the degrees easier. So we're going 1, 6, and then down to the 4, then up to the 5. And here we're kind of just holding out the same chord in the right hand, so to speak. And then we go down here, and then back up. And when I'm writing chords, I do use a bit of music theory. So like, for instance, here, this is just a basic B minor triad with another B at the top here. So I don't know what you'd call that, a ninth? I don't know. But then I kind of, after my first chord, just follow feeling. So I'll just, instead of making basic triads all the way through, I'll start by just duplicating this chord over and hearing how it sounds with only the bass note changed. And if I don't like how it sounds, I'll try adjust, say, this note up here, for example, and see how it sounds. Maybe it'll sound really nice. Who knows? Yeah, it gives it a little more power, actually. But then from this point, I started writing out a bit of like a melodic idea. So you can start seeing notes being enabled here. We've got these little like flams, I don't know what you'd call them, where you kind of just strum 2 notes one after the other. I really like the sound of that. It makes it sound like somebody playing. So now a melodic idea is starting to develop. And it goes down. And then I take this idea and kind of develop it even further. I duplicated it up an octave. So we have the exact same melody being played an octave higher, and then I added these extra notes here. And that sounds really nice. I love that melody. The piano that I used here is Contact, this Noir Felt, basic Felt preset. And the other thing I did was to just add a little bit of random to the velocities here using the randomize feature. Okay, so that's the piano. Let's go off to the stab and see the stab. So kind of the stab only comes in the last section of the track. Through the build-up, it starts developing. So I wanted something that wasn't very like predictable rhythmically, and so what I did was make sort of what's called a polymeter. And a polymeter is just kind of a melodic idea or a rhythm that doesn't resolve, according to like the 4/4 beat. So it's not following a bar and then resetting and then following another bar and resetting. You'll see the length of it is 1, instead of being 1.0.0, it's 1.0.1. So it's going an extra, an extra beat, an extra 16th note longer than 2 bars. So it's like 2 bars and a beat. And so it takes quite a long time for this pattern to line up again with the grid. You'll see here, if you follow these little dashes, you can see each time that loop resets. And just looking at it, it doesn't reset at all in this whole section until here is the first time that it does a proper reset. So it's quite a long pattern, and what I really like about this is if you're listening to it in context with all of the drums, it's kind of constantly evolving, and also in context with the piano. It's a way to take like a somewhat boring melody and keep it interesting. And the idea for this actually started on another instrument, which is this chord pluck here. So I just made this kind of sine wave pluck sound and wrote out these chords. And then, I what actually happened accidentally initially, I extended this a little bit too far. But then when I listened to it, I was like, oh, that's really cool how it takes a really long time to like resolve, so to speak. And so let's get back to the main pluck idea, which is the stab. And I'll show you how it was made. So let's just turn off that and that. So this is just a saw wave patch that I made. Pretty simple. We got our first oscillator up 1 octave. And we got 5 voices on it of unison. We got our detune at 0.22 here. Here's the different envelope shapes. And that second envelope is shaping the filter. And then oscillator B is an octave lower, and it adds some beef to the sound. And then I start really like automating a bunch of stuff. Like here I've got this first macro mapped to the fine tune here. And so you'll hear that when that goes up, it kind of just detunes the oscillator a bit and adds a bit of spice to it. Sounds pretty cool, I like it. And then we got the filter cutoff that just opens up over time here. And then the filter sustain, the envelope sustain, envelope 2, which I bring up. And then RC20, adding a bit of reverb, a little bit of distortion, a bit of wobble. I'm also automating the space amount. So here, right by the drop, it gets really like hectic and then kind of dies down into the drop, and you get almost like a sense of release. Okay, and then the next element that we should look at is probably the bass. So the bass here is also serum, and that's just following the bottom notes of the piano chords. And this is a really simple sound. It's just a saw wave with a filter. They cut off at 200 hertz, nothing else. And then, I've got that utility on there just so I can automate the intro volume. Really simple. Okay, so that's not all of the instruments. The last element here, those last 2 elements are kind of in the background. So the first one is this drone. That's from this FX Mega Pack. And that just runs all the way through with a bit of filtering. And we got this background pluck. So I'll unfreeze that quick. It's a serum pluck that I used here, this PL Athena, which is from Dreams Volume 3. And then I added a lot of delay to it. I wanted to make something that kind of I can make, these are almost like chords, so to speak, because because of that long delay, the two notes are being played together, and so they're harmonizing. And then these two notes are being played, but the delay of these ones are still running. So essentially, it's now built the B minor triad. So if we just listen to that. Oh, let me turn on the effects again. Wait, those ones. So you can hear they're still going. And now all of that harmony is together. And then we get this one. And then the octave. And that kind of all stacks up together and really fills out the background, especially when you combine the drone. And all the instruments. Bells. And then another element you might have heard, although it's kind of in the background, is this whoop sound. And so I found this sample here on Splice. Here's the name of it if you want to find it. I think I changed the transpose here to -8 to put it in key. And then I just took the Sawwave Pluck polymeter thing and just copied the MIDI from it and only enabled this note. So it's following the same pattern as the, where is it? Is it this one? Yeah, and the stab. I also made this a little more plucky. If I had to open it up, it's quite long. I just wanted it to kind of add something to the rhythm to spice it up a bit and give it a little bit of like a vocal sound. And then that's got RC20 doing the same thing as it was doing on the other Pluck. Same, you can see the automation's still the same even though it's not being used here. So I essentially just duplicated that channel and then found that sample. I added a bit of OTT to it, just to compress it a bit of reverb, and also took out a lot of the high end, and then added some overdrive. A bit of delay and filtering again. And you'll see it adds quite a lot to the track. Kind of fills it out a bit more and just adds, you know, something kind of unique to it. What is this? Oh yeah, I also found some weird sample on Splice, which was just like a string or something that had a nice pitch bend in it. And then, yeah, I like pitched it up and played with some weird effects plugins, and it was all just luck, you know, there was no like real deep thought going into it. All I wanted to do was make it sound different from the Splice sample, and it sounds very different to the Splice sample, I think. So, and then I just added some reverb to it and delay. And that plays every once in a while. And yeah, just kind of add some ear candy to the track. Okay, I think that's pretty much all the elements I explained. Down at the bottom here, I've got some drum fills that I added, you know, like some sweeps and stuff. The drum fills are like this one. It comes from the Organic Afro Fills pack, which is just like a pack full of Cool little, yeah, I guess afro fills is the only way to describe it. And yeah, I layered that with this sound that I found on Splice. I took that one because it was like in key. I was just randomly flicking through sounds, and that while my track was playing, and then I heard that one, I was like, oh, that kind of fits nicely. And so layering that with that drum fill adds something to the track. Okay, and then I just slapped a limiter on the master here, and the kind of arrangement I did by following the arrangement of this track, this Maz Vision Amana track, which is doing quite well on Beatport. So I figured, if you want to sort of emulate somebody's style, or at least do something in the same genre, if you're not too sure about how to do the arrangement, it's always good to grab a track and kind of use their arrangement as a blueprint, and that's exactly what I've done here. Okay, so yeah, hope you enjoyed that and learned a thing or two. Thanks for watching. I'm going to finish this track, probably find some vocals for it, and you might recognize it when it comes out. All right, sweet. See you in the next one.